I used to think Halloween was the safest night to be outside. Seriously, it felt like the whole world was out there with you. You'd see kids running around in superhero costumes, parents trailing behind with flashlights, and hear laughter echoing from every house. It was a community event, a night of shared fun and harmless scares. But that one Halloween, my perception of safety shattered completely. I learned that it's actually the perfect night for someone to hide in plain sight, because on Halloween everyone expects a mask. It was 2016. I was 17, living in one of those small, quiet towns in Ohio where everybody knows everybody, or so you think. My friends and I were making our final rounds through the neighborhood, soaking up the last bits of Halloween spirit before heading to a party. It was getting late, probably around 10:30 p.m. The little trick-or-treaters had all gone home, their candy bags full. The streets were almost deserted, eerily quiet except for the rustling of dry leaves blowing across the pavement and the crunching sound they made under our shoes. That's when we first saw him. He was standing at the very end of the block, under a flickering street light, perfectly still. He was wearing a pumpkin mask, the kind with those jagged, menacing teeth carved into it. Our first reaction was to laugh it off. We figured it was just some guy trying to get a last-minute scare out of people. Classic Halloween prank, right? But then we noticed something unsettling. He didn't move. Not a twitch, not a single inch. He just stood there, a silent, orange-faced silhouette against the dark street. We kept walking, trying to ignore the weird vibe he was giving off. When we turned the next corner, we glanced back. He was gone. We all breathed a little sigh of relief, joking about how creepy that was and shrugging it off. The night was young and we had a party to get to, but the relief was short-lived. As we continued down another street, there he was again. Same pumpkin mask, same unnerving, static stance. Only this time he was closer. It felt impossible. How could he have gotten ahead of us so quickly? There were no shortcuts, no alleys he could have taken. This is when the jokes stopped. We started walking faster, our casual stroll turning into a brisk, nervous pace. We'd turn a corner, and for a moment, he'd be gone. But then, a block later, he'd reappear, always ahead of us, always watching. It was like he was a glitch in reality, a character in a horror movie that we had suddenly been cast in. By 11:15, genuine fear started to set in. The fun, festive atmosphere of Halloween had completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, prickling dread. We were no longer laughing. We were whispering, constantly looking over our shoulders. We decided to cut through a nearby park. It was a shortcut we knew well, a straight path that would get us to our friend's house faster. We thought if we could just get off the winding neighborhood streets, we could lose him. The park was dark and empty, the only light coming from the pale glow of the moon. We were about halfway across the open field when my friend Tyler suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. "Guys, shut up," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Listen." We all froze. And that's when I heard it. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps crunching on the dry grass behind us. Not a hurried pace, but a calm, methodical one. Someone was following us. I slowly turned around, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum, and there he was. That pumpkin face, glowing faintly in the moonlight. But seeing him this close, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The mask, it wasn't plastic. It didn't have that cheap, glossy sheen you see on store-bought costumes. It looked organic, real, like a dried, rotting gourd. And there was something dark and thick dripping from the jagged mouth. We didn't wait to see what it was. We just ran. Sheer, panicked, adrenaline-fueled running. In our frantic escape, Tyler tripped and went down hard. I skidded to a halt, grabbing his arm and pulling him back to his feet. In that split second, I risked a look back. The man was now standing right in the middle of the field, no longer chasing us. He was just standing there, tilting his head from side to side as if he were studying us, analyzing our fear. That slow, curious head tilt was somehow more terrifying than if he had been sprinting after us. It felt predatory, calculating. We didn't stop running until we burst through the front door of my friend's house, slamming it shut and locking it behind us. We were all breathless, gasping for air, our bodies shaking uncontrollably. After a few moments, we crept to the front window and peered out through the blinds, and our hearts stopped. There he was, across the street, standing under another streetlight. The Pumpkin Man. Still, motionless, just watching the house, we called the cops immediately. It took them about 20 minutes to arrive, and in that time, we just watched him from the window, too scared to even move away. When the police cruisers finally pulled up with their lights flashing, he was gone, vanished into the night as if he were never there. The officers were patient, but you could tell they thought we were just a bunch of teenagers spooked by a Halloween prank. They searched the entire area, the streets, the park, everywhere. They found nothing, well, almost nothing. About an hour later, an officer came back to the house. He said they found something in the middle of the park, right where we said he was standing. It was a decayed pumpkin carved into a mask. But that wasn't the detail that haunts me to this day. Inside the jagged mouth of the pumpkin, stuck in the rotting flesh, were human teeth. Real human teeth. That night I realized something truly terrifying. Not all monsters on Halloween are wearing costumes. Some of them are wearing faces they've already taken. The streets might seem safe when they're filled with people in masks, but you never really know who or what is hiding behind them. Have you ever taken a delivery to a place that shouldn't exist? That night I did, and I still don't know if I delivered to the living or something else. It was Halloween night 2019. I was doing late night pizza deliveries for a local shop just outside Chicago. We were completely slammed. Everyone was ordering for parties, horror marathons, the usual Halloween chaos. Then, around 11:15 p.m., a new order popped up on the screen. The address was 137 River Street, and the notes. They just said, "Please come to the door. I'll be waiting." Now, I knew that street. It was mostly abandoned houses near the woods, the kind of place where even your GPS gives up halfway and just wishes you good luck. I asked my manager, Dave, about it. He kind of hesitated for a second, rubbing the back of his neck. "We used to get prank orders for that address all the time," he said. "Nobody's lived in that house for years. But here's the kicker, the order was prepaid with a $50 tip. $50 for a single pizza. Against my better judgment, I told Dave I'd take it. How could I say no to that kind of money? So I grabbed the pizza, put it in the hot bag, and headed out. The farther I drove from the city lights, the quieter everything got. No trick-or-treaters, no festive decorations, not even the sound of the wind rustling the leaves. It was just my car's headlights cutting a lonely path through the thick, oppressive dark. The road turned to gravel, then to dirt, and my phone lost service completely. I was on my own. When I finally pulled up to the address, I realized something was deeply wrong. The house wasn't just old, it looked frozen in time. It was a 2-story colonial, paint peeling, shutters hanging by a single hinge. But through the grimy windows I could see faint, faded orange lights flickering inside, casting long, dancing shadows. By the bottom of the crumbling stairs, a half-rotted jack-o'-lantern sat with a grotesque, slumped-in grin. It looked like it had been sitting there for a decade. I got out of my car, the pizza box feeling strangely heavy in my hands. The air was cold, but it was a still, heavy cold. I took a deep breath and called out, "Pizza delivery." My voice sounded small, swallowed by the silence. No answer, just a faint creak from inside, like the sound of old floorboards groaning under someone's weight upstairs. I was about to turn around and leave, $50 tip or not, then a voice came from inside the house. "Just come inside. Leave it on the table." It was a strange voice. It sounded like a recording, slightly distorted and tinny, too flat and monotonous to be natural. It was like someone was playing a sound clip off an old, cheap speaker. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get back in my car and drive away as fast as I could. But that $50 tip, it was like a hook pulling me forward. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was Halloween after all. The front door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and it groaned in protest. The air inside was thick and musty, smelling of old wallpaper and decay. My phone's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny ghosts. There were Halloween decorations everywhere, paper skeletons, plastic spiders, and crepe paper streamers, but they weren't new. They were faded and brittle, covered in a thick layer of dust, looking like they hadn't been touched in years. I found a small, rickety table in what must have been the living room and set the pizza box down. As I turned to leave, my light caught something on the wall beside me, and I froze. The wall was covered in dozens of framed photographs. Old, black and white pictures of families smiling on the porch, kids in homemade Halloween costumes. But in every single photo, the faces had been violently scratched out, leaving behind a mess of white, jagged marks. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. I backed away slowly, whispering into the darkness, "Hello? Is anyone here?" My voice was trembling. That's when I heard it. A small, soft laugh from upstairs. It sounded like a child. It was followed by the distinct sound of bare feet pattering, running down the hallway right above my head. Panic shot through me. I fumbled with my phone, and it slipped from my sweaty hands, clattering to the floor. The flashlight went out, plunging me into absolute darkness, and in that split second of black I saw it. A shape. Movement in the doorway to the kitchen. Someone or something was standing there, just beyond the door frame, a tall, thin silhouette against the faint light from the window. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers finding it on the dusty floor. I flicked the light back on and my heart stopped. The pizza box on the table was now open, the pizza inside. It was completely untouched, except for one thing. There were fingerprints pressed deep into the melted cheese, not a smudge. Full, distinct fingerprints, as if someone had just pressed their hand down right into the center of the pie. Then the voice came again. This time it wasn't from upstairs, it was closer, so much closer. It was right behind my ear, a cold, distorted whisper. "You stayed for dinner. Thank you." I didn't scream. I just ran. I bolted for the front door, slamming into it with my shoulder. As I burst outside, the door slammed shut behind me with a force so violent the glass in the upper pane shattered, raining down onto the porch. I didn't look back. I sprinted to my car, my lungs burning, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I was trying to breathe, trying to calm my racing heart, and that's when I noticed it. The interior light in the back of my car was on, and sitting there, right in the middle of the back seat, was a single slice of pizza, still warm. I floored it, not looking in the rearview mirror until I was miles away. The next morning I called the police. I didn't know what else to do. They went out to check the house. They called me back a few hours later and said it had been completely empty, secured, and boarded up for over 20 years. Just like my manager said, no one had been inside. But here's the thing, the part that keeps me awake at night. They found the pizza box I left on the table. But next to it on that same dusty kitchen table was another box, identical to mine. Same pizza, same toppings, except that one was from 1999, and it had my name written on the receipt. When I was a kid, Halloween was my entire world. The costumes, the mountains of candy, the big town parade, it was the one day of the year I lived for. But there was one year when the parade never really ended. It was October 31st, 2015. I was 13 and I was marching in my town's annual Halloween parade. It was a huge deal. Every year, all the schools, churches, and local stores would build these amazing floats. They were always so bright, so loud, and filled with so much laughter. But that night felt different. It was colder than I remembered it ever being on Halloween. Even the moon seemed dull and hazy, like it was trying to hide from whatever was coming. Despite the chill, the crowd was massive. Families were packed tight on both sides of Main Street, their faces glowing with excitement. I remember looking at all the smiling faces, the kids in their costumes, and thinking, this is almost *2* perfect. It felt like a scene from a movie just before everything goes wrong. We were about halfway through the parade route when the music suddenly stopped. One by one, the floats ground to a halt. The cheerful songs died out, leaving this strange, heavy silence, and that's when we saw it. A new float, appearing at the far end of the street. No one had seen it before. It wasn't decorated like the others. There were no balloons, no colorful streamers, no bright lights. It was just this massive, jet black wagon, completely covered in flickering candles and paper skulls that looked unsettlingly real. It moved without being pulled, the wheels letting out this high-pitched squeal that scraped against the silence. And walking slowly alongside it were these figures, all wearing blank white masks and carrying lanterns shaped like severed heads. At first, everyone just stared. We all thought it was just a really well-done, spooky addition to the show. The local theater group was always trying to one-up themselves. But then we started to notice something was off. The people in the crowd. They stopped cheering, their smiles faded. Their faces went blank, as if they'd completely forgotten how to express joy. It was like watching a film get its color drained out in real time. And the sound started. A deep, steady drum beat so low it felt like it was coming from inside my own chest. Boom, boom, boom. It echoed down the empty street, and with every beat the air felt heavier, more oppressive. With every beat my chest ached a little more. And then, the first kid vanished. There was no sound, no scream. 1 second, a little girl in a prince's costume was standing right by the curb, holding her father's hand. The next, she was just gone. Like the darkness had reached out and simply swallowed her whole. Panic erupted. It wasn't a loud, chaotic panic, but a thick, suffocating wave of fear. Parents started screaming, grabbing their children, trying to pull them away. But no one could run. It was like our feet were glued to the asphalt. The masked figures just kept walking, their pace never changing. Their heads would turn slowly, unnervingly, to look at each of us as they passed. I remember one of them stopping right in front of me. It leaned down, its blank mask just inches from my face. And in that moment, I could see under the edge of the mask. And there was no face, just a hollow, consuming blackness. From that void, a whisper slithered out, a voice that sounded like dry leaves scraping on concrete. It said, "You walked with us. Now you belong to us," I think I screamed. The next thing I knew, I passed out. When I woke up, it was morning. The sun was out. Main Street was empty, except for a few abandoned candy buckets and a single police car. The parade was over. But for 5 families, the nightmare was just beginning. 5 kids never came home that night, including my best friend Liam. The police launched a massive search that went on for weeks. They found nothing. No clues, no witnesses who could explain what happened, no logical answers. The official story was a mass abduction, but everyone who was there knew the truth was something else entirely. They found only one thing in the middle of the street, a single, dark wood drum. It was covered in a fine layer of ash, and carved into the side were 5 names. My friend Liam's name was the last one on the list. They canceled the Halloween parade after that. The town never spoke of it again, at least not openly. But every year on Halloween night, if you stand on Main Street when the air gets cold, you can still hear it. A faint, distant drum beat. Boom, boom, boom. And sometimes, if you listen really, really closely, you'll hear other sounds mixed in with its soft laughter, and a familiar sing-song tune that seems to end with your own name. And when you spin around, expecting to see someone, there's nothing there. Just a trail of small, wet footprints leading straight into the fog. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have your own chilling experiences, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there.